So unfortunately for Kelly Graves and company, this season came to a close. The good news, though, is this was a great year. This was a reestablish the standard sort of season for Kelly Graves and the Lady Ducks. And, they lost to Duke 59-53, the 2 seed. They had to go to Duke's own arena. They were at Cameron Indoor. It wasn't a men's game level of craziness, but Cameron crazies were there. And Oregon controlled a lot of this game, particularly in the first half. So before I get kind of to the game recap, I just want to crystallize my thoughts again here about, the season this Oregon team had. They hit 20 wins, didn't win a game in the Big Ten tournament, but won a game in the NCAA tournament, very nearly made the second weekend of the Big Dance. So that in and of itself is such a huge accomplishment that cannot go overlooked. The challenge now comes with what happens next. How does the roster reload going into next year? Because, look, unfortunately, Peyton Scott went down in this game. I would love to see what this game looked like for 4 quarters with her on the floor. Oregon did a heck of an effort. I'll get back to that. But Peyton Scott got injured, unfortunately. Deja Kelly, it was her final year of eligibility. She had an incredible game again, but the roster's going to look very different for the Ducks next year. I mean, you've got Deja Kelly, who's gone. I believe Philly Che is out of eligibility as well. She's played over 27 games in all 4 of her years, and what a career. She has had, just a double-double machine. She was great earlier today as well. So there's going to be a lot of turnover, and Kelly Graves has pulled in some notable high-profile recruits in the last couple of cycles that weren't, a huge part of this team yet. This was a very veteran group, but certainly the cultural foundation to go out in the transfer portal and get the sort of players that you need to compete at a high level year in and year out, I think has been reestablished. And if Oregon, from a resource standpoint, my understanding is that they are, if they are willing to go out and spend what it costs to get high-level players, I think the Ducks can have NCAA tournament perennial expectations, as it was before kind of this past season when, what hit the fan. So I think that the portal moves are going to be huge because there were a lot of veterans on this team, but that's kind of college basketball now. I was talking to a coach on a different staff recently, and I was asking about the level of turnover that was expected for their team. And I was told, everybody's pretty much going to have 10 to 12 new players at, varying level. It depends on which level you go to, low major, high major, mid major, but it's going to be increasingly common in college basketball now with the portal and NIL. And college basketball, I think, has always had more turnover than college football because you only have to stay at your school for 1 year before you go to the NBA draft. So I look at or the WNBA draft. I'm pretty sure it's the same rule in WNBA. Don't quote me on that one, because Caitlin Clark, I know, came back. I think that she had the option to return. I might double check that after the show. But anyway, so there's always been more turnover in college basketball than football, but it's now just been exacerbated to the point where you're just going to turn over basically half your roster every year. That's the way it is now. If you don't like it, you don't have to coach. But Kelly Graves clearly likes it enough. And you should take the time to go watch his post-game press conference and hear him talk about the team and Deja Kelly and hear what Deja had to say. I thought they all had really awesome stuff to say, and I'm glad they're out there representing the University of Oregon. And they put on a heck of a season. And this game against Duke, let's shift over to that. This was so winnable. Oregon was a 13.5 to 14-point underdog. Just before the game, though, Duke's leading scorer was announced as a late scratch, and Oregon had capitalized on that to the tune of a 5-point halftime lead. Now it was a slugfest. It was 28-23, but then Oregon went minus 10 in the third quarter. There was a 13-1 run in there by the Blue Devils where Oregon was turning the ball over, giving up too many easy baskets. It was just kind of one of those runs that you see a lot in March Madness this time of year. So unfortunately, they were on the wrong end of that. But when Peyton Scott went down with an injury, which stunk because that kid has battled a number of injuries in her career, I got to tell you, my confidence level dropped precipitously. I was thinking, well, if you don't have 2 shot creators, in Deja Kelly and Peyton Scott and Scott was hitting some tough ones. She only had a couple of field goals in this game, but she was at least helping the offense move a little bit more. This game was really about Deja Kelly and Philly Che, to no surprise. But when that happened, I thought, boy, this is going to be tough. And then all of a sudden, Oregon had a chance. Oregon made a run, and it was on the back of Deja Kelly, her second straight 20-point game in the NCAA tournament for the Ducks this year. Of course, they beat Vanderbilt in round one. They lose to Duke here, and I mean, that was just a heck of an effort to put up out there. When Scott went down, it almost felt like it galvanized the team and propelled them to playing some of their best basketball. And they had chances late. They couldn't hit a couple of big shots, and then the turnovers were the problem. Oregon had 17 turnovers in this game. You're going up against a number 2 seed on their home floor in the NCAA tournament. That's just too many. And a lot of them were careless too. I mean, a lot of them were, not being solid on a handoff and kind of bouncing the ball out there, making poor decisions. Oregon was down. They were needing a miracle comeback of sorts, but they were down 5 late in the game. They actually forced a turnover with the pressure that they had set up. And then they got the ball and just made a disastrous pass when they could have cut it to a 1-possession game, and there was still some time on the clock. And that was just kind of emblematic of what, went wrong for the Ducks in this game. So, Deja Kelly, as I said, was great as a scorer, but she had 1 assist and 5 turnovers. Not ideal, but 4 or 5 Oregon's starters had multiple turnovers, and they were just really costly. They were fueling the Duke run. They were leading to runouts. That was the first thing that really did Oregon in this game. The second thing, the missed layups. Boy, everybody got a piece of this, unfortunately, throughout the course of the game. And you look up, and Oregon lost the game by 6 points. They left at least 6 points out there on the floor in missed layups. And I don't mean contested ones. I mean open ones. And it sucks that it comes down to stuff like that, but that's how March Madness goes sometimes, is you look up and, hey, you got to do the basic stuff. You got to do the little stuff. You don't have to, have some ungodly day from 3. Oregon was 4 of 14 from beyond the arc, and Duke was 7 of 17. I mean, sure, you're -9 shooting-wise on the perimeter, and Oregon only attempted 10 free throws, but this was a defensive game. And that's why I want to talk about Philly Che, because Philly Che, who was just an incredibly raw player when she first started at Oregon, I felt like she couldn't come off the court in this game. Anytime she did, Oregon struggled to rebound. She had 13 of Oregon's 33 rebounds in this one. She had 14 points, 13 boards, 6 of them were offensive, but her defense was huge. The rebounding was the biggest thing, though. When she came off the court, Duke was able to get a few more offensive rebounds. They ended the game with 10, which is, pretty standard and about average. I'd be willing to guess. I don't know if someone's tracked this stat. I bet you 6 of those offensive rebounds, maybe even 7, came when Philly Che was not on the floor. So her impact was huge, and it was her and Deja Kelly, but with those two moving on, like I mentioned earlier, that's where Kelly Graves and this coaching staff have to look into the future to figure out, okay, you're replacing your 2 biggest pieces now, but if you've got the resources to go get high-end players in the transfer portal, and you're able to develop some of the kids you've recruited over the last couple of years, I think this program is in a good place. I think they are trending back up towards not, a Sabrina COVID team that would have won the national championship, but certainly getting back to being a perennial NCAA tournament team, which is where I think Oregon fans should expect them to be. So that's the state of Oregon hoops. Talk to you all again soon. Nice, smooth ending to the show right there. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.